It's the weekend, and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Woo! 2018. New music. New voicer. That voice is good. That's like a serious voice. No offense, Dave Barrett, but man, that is a good voice. Smooth as silk. So good. Welcome to 2018. It's Jill on Money. And and by the way, that music composed just for us. Thank you very much. My friend Joel Goodman, who's a serious... The guy's won like Oscars. Do you know that, Mark? For his film composition. Thank God he's my friend's brother, so he cut me a deal on the music. But it wasn't cheap, but I did it for you guys. Hey, happy 2018. Hope you had a good break. Mark and I have been very busy. Mark, you moved into the apartment. You're all set now. And are you going to start talking on the microphone ever so soon, maybe? Soon. He's ready. He's getting ready for it. I accomplished a great deal. I did part of what I really wanted to do during the break, which is a whole lot of nothing, including... catching up. I never had watched Game of Thrones. So we got through 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. And here's my analysis. It is a very compelling story, but it is violent. Oh my God. It's unbelievable. Isn't that necessary to have like 12 minutes of beheadings? 2 would have sufficed in my mind. Anyway, you can tell, I'm rested. I'm psyched. This is going to be a great year for us. We are going to do lots of different things this year. We're going to keep taking your questions. And if you have a financial question, first of the year, I bet you do. We'd love to hear from you. 855-411-JILL. 855-411-JILL. You can still email us, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And wait until you check out the new website. By the time you click on Jill on Money, I hope it's ready. I'm not sure. It might be. Our fingers are crossed. Anyway, let's take a call. It's Josh. He is our first caller of 2018. Welcome to Jill on Money. Josh, what can we do for you?
Well, I was wondering if I'm contributing too much money to my 401k.
What? Blasphemy. Never too much. Okay, wait. First of all, tell us about yourself. How much money do you make?
Well, I started a new career about a year ago.
Okay.
I'm already making about $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
I had to cash out my 401k, all my savings, kind of start over when I lost my job about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I started putting 30% toward my 401k since I really don't have any expenses at all. All I have to pay every week is food, my job, I basically live at work, and no utilities, no expenses, just food and.
Wait a minute. What do you mean you live at work? What, you don't have to pay rent?
Nope, I'm a truck driver, an over-the-road truck driver.
Wow.
So
oh my
every
God.
now and then I go home, see mom and dad, but for the most part I just sleep on the truck.
Okay, and how old are you?
36.
And so you're putting 30% away. Do you have any money just in like safe cash? Like I would call it almost just like a safety net.
I have $15,000 in my bank account.
Oh, that's perfect. Any debt that's outstanding? You said you kind of had to start over, but any debt that's out there?
Zero debt.
Oh my God. Yeah, I love this idea. I mean, honestly, it seems to me that putting as much as you possibly can into retirement at this point in your life makes a ton of sense because, as you said, you had to kind of start over. And I think that if you can afford it and you can pay all your bills and life's good, yeah, rock and roll. I mean, it's not too much because, considering that you're basically starting from zero, you kind of you have to make up the 15 years that you probably had to erase when times got tough. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Are there any other financial issues that are coming around the corner that we should be thinking about? Do you think you might need a house, or do you think that there are some other areas?
That is one thing I've been looking at. I haven't really had anywhere that I've called home the past year, and I've seen the whole country, and I am looking for somewhere just to be able to call home so coming up with a down payment on a house was part of my wondering, am I putting too much toward that retirement?
Yeah. Well, I would say this. If, in fact, you are really going to start honing in on a place to live, then you're going to probably have to pull back a little bit. But hey, look, even if you went to 20%, right, and you were putting money away, that would still be a good number, and then save the rest. I mean, I love the idea that you are essentially kick-starting your entire retirement plan in one fell swoop. But, I would be somewhat cautious about buying someplace if you didn't have to, especially because obviously, in many areas, renting is still probably a more appealing option financially than owning. But like if you want to put roots down, that's totally different. But I think that, you're rootless right now. You're doing okay. But yeah, I mean, you'd have to pull back if a house is really part of the game plan eventually.
Yeah, I think a house versus renting, I don't think a landlord would be very happy if I parked a semi-truck in the front yard. So
I see. I see. So can I ask a dumb question, if you don't mind? So I've never had a somebody I could. So you can sleep in there, but like you have a bed. Like, tell me what's it like?
It's like driving a small apartment down the road.
Get out.
I've got a bed, a TV. I've got a microwave, a fridge. I've got a small electric stove.
That's kind of amazing.
The only thing it's missing is a bathroom and a shower, which I hear some of the trucks have that if I wanted to spend the money on something like that.
So wait a minute, you bought your own truck, or I don't get it. Whose truck is it?
It belongs to the company.
Right.
I was actually considering buying my own truck, though, because then I can increase my income significantly, but I also increase my risks significantly, too, and I'm not sure that
you're not ready for that right now. Hey, how much does a new truck cost, just out of curiosity?
Brand new, I think you're looking at $150,000 to $200,000.
Wow. But I'm sure that you could finance that, and would you keep more of the money if you owned the truck?
If I owned the truck, I'd probably be making, from what I've seen, just kind of looking into companies that hire people that own their own truck. Average is between $150,000 and $250,000
What?
a year.
Holy smokes! Don't buy a house, buy a truck then.
I've talked to lots of drivers that own their own truck.
Yeah.
And they run into repairs and expenses and all that stuff that eats away at that money very quickly.
Oh my God, though, but still, that's impressive. All right, now you got me interested in this. This is a whole business I didn't know anything about. Keep putting the money away into your retirement account. If you really think you want to buy a house, pull it back to say 20%. And did they match your contribution or not?
4% is the maximum that I can take advantage of their contribution, so I'm well beyond that.
All right. That seems fine. Good. Keep putting money away. You're doing great. Let me know if you end up buying the truck, okay?
I will definitely call back if I buy the truck.
All right, Josh. Thanks so much for calling. I'll talk to you, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you.
All right, we'll get back to more of your questions. This is Jill on Money, and if you really have something you got to get off your chest, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back with Jill on Money, and if you have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone number here is 855-411-JILL. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And we love hearing from you, so, just give us a jingle. It's so much fun to talk to you and hear your stories and try to help you through the nasty financial world that's out there. Today, we've got Carter. He's on the line from Prescott, Arizona. And Mark had to school me in how to say Prescott. Did I do okay, Carter?
You did. Thanks.
Oh, thank God. All right. Tell me, what's going on? How can I help you out today?
Well, I've been listening to your show a little bit, and, I hear a lot of the people calling in are, a little older, closer to retirement. So, that kind of information doesn't exactly help someone who's in their 30s.
Yep.
So, I'm mostly just looking to see what your advice would be on someone who wants to get in on the market, but has a issue with liquidity of, I have, like 30,000 in the bank, and, it's basically just sitting there, and I want to be able to use it, but I also have, a wife and a 2-year-old, and, the liquidity is an issue. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, Carter, you are working. How much do you earn?
Personally, about 75,000.
And does your wife work also?
She does. She makes an extra 50,000.
Okay. And how's your cash flow on that 125 combined?
Pretty decent.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of debt, but standard mortgage, and one car is paid off, one car isn't. Some pretty basic stuff. Internet, utilities, that kind of thing. So,
How much is the house worth, would you guess?
about 350.
How much of the mortgage remains?
185.
Wow, that's
around.
You've paid that down a lot, or did you put a lot down, or what happened there?
Put a lot down, yeah.
Okay. And the 30 grand that's in the bank is you would consider that your emergency reserve fund, right?
Right.
And it's not earmarked for anything else right now.
Not at this point, no.
Okay. And how much remains on your car loan?
Probably about like 7,000.
What's the rate on that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's,
cheapish, or like
pretty cheap. It was like a $10,000 car. It's not.
Okay.
It wasn't
I got you.
much.
Tell me about your retirement stuff. What are you doing? Like, are you putting money into a 401k or a 403b, each of you, or using a Roth? What are you doing?
At this point, I have just a standard IRA that was before I started working, and then I also have a 401k with my current employer, and that is about it at this time. And not a whole lot is actually going into that 401k right now, as I said, from liquidity issues and all that.
And what about your wife?
She does not have any of that set up. Her company does not offer that.
What percentage are you putting away into your 401k?
Probably less than 5%.
Do you get a match?
3%.
Do you get a match?
I do get a match, yeah, up to $2,500 a year.
Are you putting in at least that much? No.
No.
Okay. So here's what I think. I think that at the very least, what you should be trying to do is to get to that matching part of it. That is really going to be the best way for you to be investing right now. And if your cash flow allows, then, I'd love to see you slowly but surely try to increase your contribution level. And even if your wife doesn't want, she can open up a Roth IRA if she'd like. That certainly is within your reach. But, you don't, until you actually have the money to max out the matching component, it doesn't seem like you should be doing anything else from the investment world. And, the 30 grand that's in the bank, if you want to try to make it work a little bit better, if you want to try to get a couple of longer term CDs and boost your interest, that's fine. I wouldn't do anything with that. I really wouldn't. I know that it makes you nuts to sit there, to see that it sits there and it's not making money, especially when you have a year like we just had in the market. It's certainly... It is much more prudent to have access to that liquidity than not. And so my hope for you is that you don't get a trigger finger on that and that you just maintain it. And if you want to juice up the interest that you're receiving, you can shop around a little bit. There's a website called depositaccounts.com, which can show you lots of different alternatives. Maybe there's an online bank that you can use and get the interest a little bit higher. But it is much more important that you have the liquidity. It's safe, it's sound, nothing bad happens to it. And as your cash flow allows, just put more money into that 401k until you can reach the matching level. And if things get a lot better, then you'll encourage your wife to open up an IRA herself, a Roth IRA, and you can continue to put money away into your retirement account. But beyond that, I don't think you should be doing much more. I think that's exactly how you should be positioning yourselves.
Okay, and you don't think even like taking 5,000, 10,000 off of that 30 to try to make that work at a little bit.
Well, okay, the only way I would do that, if you really are telling me, what would you say your expenses are on a monthly basis? What's your guess?
Probably roughly 2,000, 2,500, somewhere around there.
All right. So, I mean, the problem for you is that, like, the way that I calculate emergency reserves is very conservative. And I say, I like to have 6 to 12 months of my expenses in the bank. So having 30 grand is right there. Okay. If you wanted to do 5,000, this is what I would do. I would increase my contribution to my 401k so that I could actually capture the match. And I'd use the 5 grand that's in the bank to float the difference. So you don't have to invest the money that's in the bank. You have to live on some of it so that you can afford to put more money into your 401k. That's what I would do.
Okay.
But don't go below 25 grand.
Okay.
All right. But if something bad happens, don't call me back and yell at me. All right.
Never.
All right, good. So do that. You can live on that. You can basically say, I'm going to bounce up my 401k contribution. I'll get the match. See if you can live with it. I mean, for all I know, you'll somehow readjust. And, instead of putting 3% in, you put 5% in, you get the match and everything's fine. And you don't even need to use the money in the bank. But that's what I would do. Use that 401k. By the way, using the 401k is also going to obviously impact your taxes in a very positive way. You're going to reduce your taxable income. So you might as well get the free money of the match, start to reduce that income by sloshing it over into the retirement account. And you can use the extra money in the bank to float you during the period of time that you're experimenting with this. So I wish you the best of luck. And Carter from Prescott, thank you so much for calling.
Thanks so much, Jill. I appreciate it.
Take care. Well, we'll get back to your questions in just a moment. I just was amazed because I love all the year-end lists. My favorite thing in the world, the best shows, the best movies. I did notice that the top 5 films in the United States, I have seen 0 of the top 5 films. 0 of the top. So, of course, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I want to publicly admit that the last time I saw a Star Wars movie was the third one, which I think was like in 1979, right? There's the first one, then The Empire Strikes Back, right? What's the third one? Return of the Jedi. Thank you. That's the last Star Wars movie I've seen. Star Wars so far in 27, well, not for so far, but in 2017, $533 million. Who says the film industry's dead? Beauty and the Beast, $504 million. Wonder Woman, I'm going to watch that on the plane. I'm going out to California. I think I'll watch Wonder Woman on the plane. $413 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I never saw 1. I don't even know what this is. $390 million. Spider-Man Homecoming. $334. By the way, the top film in China, Mark, Wolf Warrior 2. Have you heard of that? I haven't either. $854 million. I can't even believe it. Okay. I guess the film industry is not dead. There you have it. When we return, we are going to take more of your questions. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can call us 855-411-JILL. Or you can email us, askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. We will be right back.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill@jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You're back with Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. I'm Jill Schlesinger. If you've got a financial question, concern, issue, why don't you contact us? Come on. It's so easy. 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. AskJill@JillOnMoney.com. And let's do an email from Sandra. And here's what she writes. She says, I've got a good problem. I sold a piece of property. I cleared $265,000. I'm not sure how to handle the money so that I can minimize my tax liability. I'd like to give some of it to each of my 8 grandchildren. Okay, sounds good. 265 grand. Keep that in mind. Property was a piece of leased land remaining from the home I had lived in. I was reimbursed for the house and the contents, but not the land, which was destroyed before Hurricane Ivan. Okay. The $265,000 are proceeds from being leased, not owned, and that might change my tax liability. She says, I can't get an appointment locally with a CPA. That seems ridiculous. Okay, first of all, I don't know how to minimize your taxes. You got to talk to a CPA or a tax professional. And just get into somebody, and even if you have to call someone on the phone, you have kids, get somebody's accountant to help you out, just to talk this through. I'm 82 years old. I'm divorced, retired, Social Security, retirement pension, minimum distributions from a thrift savings plan. My IRA and brokerage accounts total $240,000. I own a home. I'm still making payments of $700. That's funny. The mortgage has 20 years remaining. The house is $210 valuation. Equity is $100,000. I'm not in great health. I'm worried I'm going to need money for assisted living. So, can you help me decide what to do with this money to minimize taxes? Well, I mean, the taxes are going to be the taxes. You got to get to a CPA. 2, leave a bit to my grandchildren in the most efficient way. Some are still minors. The most efficient way is, there's 2 different things to think about. You can put together a pretty quick will and trust that essentially allows you to gift it out give it out upon your death, or you can just leave it in a will. And, it sounds to me like actually you need, number 1, a CPA, number 2, an estate attorney, because you're going to need that. And in terms of, she wants to increase her monthly income. So that I would just say that, you've got this money that with brokerage accounts. I don't know if you like or dislike the people that are helping you with that. Maybe it's time to just go to a certified financial planner. Maybe that's the deal. So if you can't get into a CPA and you can't see a lawyer, I think it's time to go to a CFP. Go to letsmakeaplan.org. Letsmakeaplan.org. Put in your zip code, and you're going to get the names of some different CFPs in your neighborhood. And those people are going to help you work through this. I don't have to do this for you because there's too many moving pieces here. You need an advisor. You need an advisor. And people need to be a little bit more, I can't even believe you can't get an appointment with a CPA. That's maybe, I don't know, because of tax reform. Who knows? But anyway, you need a CFP. You need to build a plan. All of these things are doable. So absolutely, positively, go get a planner. That's what I'm going to say. How about that, Michael? I'm saying Michael Goodman because I was reading an email from him. How about that, Mark? So, okay, if you are looking at your financial life a little bit differently, it's the new year, and you too need a financial advisor, it is time to start the process. And that also can begin with you actually talking through the issues that are important to you with somebody who is objective, that's somebody who has your best interests at heart. And that is with someone who is a fiduciary, somebody who's going to put your interest before theirs or their company's. And that is what happens when you work with a fiduciary advisor. You can go to CFP board and go to letsmakeaplan.org. You can get a referral from friends of yours. I don't care, but there's too much going on in the world for you to be battling it out alone. All of you. It's hard stuff. It's hard stuff for me. Hey, I have CFPs in my life and I ask them questions all the time. No one person can know all of this stuff. Why do we expect to know all this stuff? It's hard. It really is. So I think that getting qualified financial advice from someone who has to put your needs first is definitely high up there for your New Year's resolutions. And if you work with an advisor, by the way, please make sure that that person is held to a fiduciary standard, because that way you know they are going to actually put you first. And putting you first is really what I think is important. All right. Now, if you have a question just like that, it's so easy to shoot us a note. And maybe you're shy. You don't want to go on the radio live. I get it. Send us an email. AskJill@JillOnMoney.com. Just like that. By the way, just a little update here, because we are, sort of wrapping up the year that was. You probably don't remember this, but 10 years ago, Warren Buffett bet $1 million that an index fund would outperform a basket of hedge funds over a decade. And it was awesome, because he basically said, come on, I dare any of you hedge fund mooks to come back and say, you're going to beat the index. Come on, show me. Show me how you can. One guy actually took him up, okay? This guy picked a basket of hedge funds. The asset manager was Protege Partners. Okay, so we're talking, he made this bet in 2007 through 2017, right? So he made the bet before the financial crisis, including the financial crisis and the Great Recession, and the market bottomed out, and we came back. Okay, you ready for the numbers? This is so great. 7% for Warren Buffett, 2.2% for the hedge funds. Come on. What's better than that? You dopes, stop putting your money in hedge funds. It's ridiculous. Index funds, man. Live, learn, be free. It's Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
I just can't get, I can listen to his voice over and over. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And that voice is smooth as silk and new for 2018. Woo! Thanks so much for listening. So 2017, what an unbelievable year, right? Synchronistic global growth. I said that on the air, and someone made fun of me for saying it. I'll tell you who made fun of me, Mark. You're going to like this. The audio person, Mary, is like, do you want to have that S? You need to say that? Those S's are going to kill you, Jill. Mary in audio for CTM. Short woman, blonde hair. Anyway, she made fun of me because I said synchronistic global growth. Well, we did. We had much better growth than expected all across the world. You know what? The FTSE All-World Index up 22% last year. It was the biggest rise since 2009, fourth biggest since records have been kept. Dow did incredibly well, up 25%. S&P up almost 19%. NASDAQ up 28%. Oh, by the way, I love the people who wrote in and said to me, oh, then the Russell 2000 was so bad. It was so bad. It was 13%, by the way. And I looked it up. The previous year, it was the biggest winner. It was like up 20-something% in 2016. So don't worry about it. Russell still is a good index to own. Small companies, good. Again, this is the second longest bull market on record. It began in March of 2009. We are coming towards the 9th anniversary of it. And, it's hard to understate, to really understate how just amazing this was. But the S&P had positive monthly returns for guess how many months in 2017? You want to guess, Mark? 12. Thank you very much. The last time that happened was 1970. So had positive returns in each month of 2017. Rose every month of the year. Dipped slightly. It's funny. So what happened was in March, it was dipped slightly, but if you added in the dividends, it was positive. So I should have said all in. Oh, God, it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. 14 straight months of positive returns all in. Starting back. I don't know. I'm getting nervous. Anyone else getting nervous? I don't know. I'm getting nervous. I know it's no Bitcoin, which is great because we actually have. I wrote an article about Bitcoin, which Jim wanted to respond. He says, I hope you can lend some advice or insight on my dilemma. I mined Litecoins. So Bitcoin is one type of cryptocurrency. Litecoin is another. So this guy, Jim, mined Litecoins from 2013 to 2014. He's accumulated over 300. He placed them into an exchange from his wallet. Now that they have risen in value, I wanted to get them back to my wallet and into an exchange so I can cash out. I'm sure you are aware of the whole BTCE, that's the exchange, situation. Anyway, the long story short is that he cannot get this account verified. So he bought this stuff, he mined this stuff, he put it in the BTCE exchange, which has been a complete nightmare. He says, I tried to get verified. I made it through the steps showing my deposits. So he gets to the place where it shows 302 coins to BTCE. Trying to continue, I learned you need to be a citizen of a country other than the United States. Without that documentation, you can't get verified. I know I'm not alone on this. I hope there's something that can be done, an agency that can help. I'm thinking with all the press on Bitcoin, someone or something should be stirring on this problem. Please let me know if you can help. Here's how I can help. I can help by telling you that one of the biggest issues that we are facing when we start talking about these new currencies is they're not regulated. There is no one to look for. There is no Securities and Exchange Commission. There is no FINRA. There is no regulator. And the charm and benefit of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies has always been, or one of the selling points is, okay, it's completely independent. It's not backed by a central bank. It's not regulated. We've taken out the middleman. And here is the problem. So it is not actually matured to the place where you're going to get any resolution. Now, that said, I agree with you. I think something will likely occur. I just don't know what it's going to be. And I'm worried from your perspective that by the time something does come along, this whole thing essentially will be for naught for someone like you. It'll probably be better in the future. Keep at it. Stay connected. See if there are some forums that you can take part in. But there's no one you can go to. There's no regulator that's going to help you out. I'm so sorry. I feel bad about that one, Mark. But it's kind of like the Wild West. Think of it this way. You're a guy who ran out to the Great West, and you got your pick in, what is that, right? It's a pick. Let's see how I'm making a pick motion in hand, and you got your sack on your back. Let's just call yourself Mark. And Mark traipses across the country, picks up a bunch of gold, throws it in his sack, hides it in a cave, then gets conked on the head, can't remember where the cave is, or knows where the cave is but can't get into the cave. Eesh, it's tough. I'm sorry, Jim. Good luck. You're listening to Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We will be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
Do you think at some point I'm going to get used to that voice because I love it so much? All I can do is talk about it. It is like having Barry White do my intros. And with Joel Goodman's music underneath, I couldn't be happier. So welcome to 2018. And this is Jill on Money. Did you make a resolution for 2018, Mark? Mark's is to read more. What do you mean, like read more novels or read more what? Read more not. That's ridiculous because all you do is read nonfiction. You should resolve. Let me tell you what you should resolve to do. you should be reading more fiction because you read nonfiction all the time. You read newspapers and columns and blogs and all that. Oh, my God. He says, if I know it's fake, I can't do it. It's bizarre. I resolved to see more people that I really love in 2018. That was my resolution. So you know who you are, and you will be hearing from me. That's my resolution. Meanwhile, did you make a financial resolution? Fidelity Investments always does that dopey financial resolution survey, and every year it's the same thing. Like, I want to save more, spend less. That's all it is. Anyway, great article over the New Year's weekend, which said a quarter of resolutions are done within 1 week. Did you blow your diet already? In 1 week. In 6 months, half survive. By the end of the year, just 10% have been fully kept. So the best way to keep financial resolutions, everything else is probably the same. You write them down. Don't do too many. You make it concrete. So the resolution save more is a ridiculous one. Instead, say, contribute 6% of my salary to my retirement plan. Then automate it. Put it on autopilot. Get on track. Maybe look at 2 or 4 times a year. And tell someone who's going to pat you on the back for it, okay? Because that helps too. All right, stay tuned. We've got a great interview to launch the new year with Rachel Sherman. She's going to tell us why rich people are so anxious. It sounds like a joke, but it's actually kind of cool. 855-411-JILL. That's our phone number. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money. Mark's making fun of me right now. It's terrible. Oh, by the way, there's going to be a big change this year because Mark is threatening to come on the microphone a little bit more in 2018. So he says, we'll see about that. I don't know. Could be a lot of fun, actually. You get a sense of, kind of what's going on with him and hear his voice. I think you've done it, once or twice before? I think once before, maybe. Anyway, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. 855-411-JILL. That is our phone number. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And what's been interesting is to hear from some of you about your New Year's resolutions. Not surprisingly, a lot of people are saying that they are looking to save more and to invest more. Yeah, of course, coming off a good year like we just had, sure you want to invest. Now you want to invest. Tell me you want to invest in 2008, 2009. But I will say the returns of last year were pretty stunning. Don't expect a repeat. I mean, if you were to get a repeat, if we were to get a repeat, it would just be amazing, but I don't like counting on it. And the best thing you can do is stick to that game plan. Don't mess around too much. Don't try to be cute. Don't try to outguess. You're far better off simply sticking to the plan. Oh, you don't have a plan? How about a plan? Tax season right around the corner. You're going to have to deal with all this. Taxes are going to be way more complicated. Well, I shouldn't say way more. For many people, taxes are going to be a lot more complicated. For some of you, it's going to be a lot easier. I mean, it's amazing to consider that more people will actually be able to take the deduction, the standard deduction, but a lot of people who are itemizing, it's going to be tough. All right. So a lot of the tax plan's critics have said that the plan would lead to even more income inequality. And that is interesting because I interviewed a woman who actually did a surprisingly fascinating study of people who have a lot of wealth. And what she found is that they're kind of uptight about their wealth. I know. Poor little them. I thought that too. But check out this interview with Rachel Sherman. Her book is Uneasy Street, The Anxieties of Affluence. You might be surprised why these people are not feeling comfortable about being wealthy. I know what you're thinking. You'd trade with them? Okay, me too. So here's our interview with Rachel Sherman. And we start with a funny question. We wanted to know what was her best financial decision. So we start the program with a very important question. You ready?
Yeah.
What's the best financial decision you've ever made in your personal life?
Wow.
Stump the DJ.
Yeah. I'm going to say to buy an undervalued apartment in an undervalued neighborhood.
Like a sketchy neighborhood?
I'm not a big fan of the word sketchy.
Was it sketchy when you bought it? Were your parents like, are you sure you're going to live there?
No, but my parents don't know the neighborhood very well.
Well, I'll give you a good example of that. When my sister, you're from Philadelphia, when my sister was at Penn, they lived off campus in a really beautiful house in a horrible neighborhood. And my sister said to me, if Mommy and Daddy knew where I lived, they would never let me live here. So is it something like if you transplanted it into Philadelphia, would your parents have been like, you know what, I don't think we really want you to live there?
I don't think so.
Right.
No, I don't think so. It was just a neighborhood that, like middle and upper middle class white people don't live in, but I don't think it was a dangerous neighborhood.
All right, so good. And you still live there?
I still live there.
All right. So this is a fascinating book. I found myself a little bit angry, even though in the beginning of the book you say no judgments, like don't judge. I'm reading through the book and I'm thinking like, why should you have anxiety if you have affluence? What was the root cause of the anxieties that you encountered by interviewing these 50-some people?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different root causes. I mean, one of them is the fact that we live in this moment of high economic inequality that is not only high, for the last couple of decades and been growing for the last couple of decades, but also now much more publicly visible. So Occupy Wall Street, the Great Recession, the Bernie Sanders campaign, all of that sort of brought inequality to the fore in a way that I think is hard for people to deal with. That said, I don't think it's only this kind of more contemporary political and cultural environment that is influencing the way these people are talking about their wealth. I think there's also a longer standing kind of stigma of wealth in some cases. And what I argue in the book is that, the people that I talk to try to be morally worthy of their wealth because it's so easy to be seen as unworthy, right? There's so many judgments. These aren't the judgments that you made, I don't think, but it's very common to judge wealthy people for over-consuming, for being ostentatious, for being materialistic, right? What they do with their money, not giving away enough money, not having worked hard enough for their money, or not working once they get the money. The people that I interviewed are very concerned about their kids being kind of entitled brats. They're all trying to avoid the word entitlement, the feeling of entitlement. And that, I think, is the stigma itself, right? That sense of being entitled.
It was interesting because you also point out that they break down into two sides, a downward versus an upward tilt. Can you talk a little bit about what each of those does for the people who see their lens of their wealth through those different orientations?
Yeah, and maybe I can just say a little bit about who I talked to, actually, because I think the book has been mischaracterized as being only about super wealthy people, and that's not exactly right. So I talked to people, almost all of them are in the top 1%. I talked to 50 people in 42 households, and most of them are in the top 1% with incomes over $500,000 a year, assets of over $3 million. But, there's a big range between people with $500,000 income and people with $10 million income, which I also talked to, or people have $3 million in assets and people have $50 million in assets. So there is a range, and I want to be clear about that. And there's also a lot of variation between people who work in who are in high earning families, typically in finance and related industries, and those who have inherited wealth and are more likely to be working in the arts or in, creative professions, in academia, nonprofits, and so on. There's several different kinds of variation in this sample, but those are some important ones. The people that I talk about as upward oriented are more likely to be the finance families, not exclusively, and they're people who tend to compare themselves to others like them or people who have more than they do.
Did you find any of these people who were comfortable? Like you had these 50 interviews, right? 42 families. Was there someone who just sort of like felt, because I read this and I felt like everyone's uncomfortable in his or her own skin. It was like, it made me anxious for them. I mean, I really did. I'm like, dude, go to therapy and get over this, right? But were there some who just kind of wore it better and more comfortable in it all?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And some of them do go to therapy and some of them have gotten over it. So some of the more kind of liberal inheritors or progressive inheritors have talked about this in therapy. They were more likely to talk about it with me because they were often more used to talking about it in some kind of community that they already had or with their therapist or whatever. And I think that they also felt more explicitly this discomfort. Not everybody talks about it so explicitly. And I don't want to give the impression that people are just walking around being tortured all the time. I think that mostly they live their lives, and it's only when, some weird interviewer like me comes and talks to them about it that they have to articulate any of these feelings. So they're still living their privileged lives in a relatively comfortable way.
You're listening to Jill on Money. When we return, more of our interview with Rachel Sherman. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, give us a holler. Our phone number here is 855-411-JILL, and our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. When we talk about the income inequality in the United States and even around the world, you probably think more about how people are feeling at the bottom end, but how are people feeling on the higher end? Well, pretty ambivalent, according to Rachel Sherman. She's our guest. She is the author of a book called Uneasy Street, The Anxieties of Affluence. And this is a surprising and revealing look at how wealthy people view their own status and their place in society. So here's more of our interview with Rachel Sherman. It's so funny. One of the things that you talked about is that people have such great ambivalence. I see that more with the women who are my contemporaries than the men. Where I experience it, I think you identify it in the book, is that, friends of mine who are married to people who are really well off or made a ton of money, and they opt out and they, like I went to Harvard Law School, or I went to Stanford, or I went to Brown, and I had this degree and I had a career, and now I'm taking a left off of that road. And that's when I hear the most, it's like shame almost. Like, I know I should, can you talk a little bit about those folks, especially the women?
I should say that most people that I talk to, like I have a lot of stay-at-home moms in exactly that category, married to men who are earning high salaries. And then I have a lot of these liberal inheritors. And those are both groups that are more likely, I think, to feel these conflicts, although I think they feel them usually in different ways, than the men who are highly paid in finance. I have fewer of those in the sample. They're harder to get to because they don't have any time because they're working all the time. And I think they're less likely to talk about this. And one interesting fact related to the question is that some of these women said, I'm not going to tell my husband that I talked to you because he would kill me. He's so private. Or they would say, I can't tell you our total assets because, my husband would be very upset. So there is a way in which I think men maybe, or at least are perceived by their wives as being more private about some of this than they are, which doesn't necessarily mean more conflicted, but it does, it does speak to they're not just like, yes, let it all hang out, I'm rich and it's great. So that said, I think that these women, it's really challenging. I grew up and you grew up in a moment where women who came from privilege, a lot of privilege or just kind of middle or upper middle class background were expected to get educated and they were expected to work, right? So women who aren't doing that, it's not like the kind of old upper class, of like my grandmother who would not have considered working for money, right? That would have been bad. And so the fact that she didn't do that, I doubt that she ever thought for a single moment that she would have liked to do that or that she was less of a person because she was doing that. But when you're educated to do that and you do it, these women had all worked in, most of them as lawyers or in finance and, like significant professional occupations. It is hard then to be like, what am I doing with myself? Because you're not really socially valued. Then they're contending at the same time with, I think, very strongly negative social images of wealthy women, especially wealthy women who don't work, right? They're dilettantes. They just go to spin class all day. They just get their nails done. They're not even really taking care of their own kids because they have, nannies and household help. And so they don't even get the kind of symbolic benefit of mothering, which is, still really highly valued. So they're working against that. I mean, they talk to me about everything they do. They think it's work. They want to represent it as work, even though it's unpaid work.
It feels like that's how we get into this weird helicopter parenting in some respects, because like I am now going to become a professional mom. Since I'm not working, I am now going to be so hyper involved in my kid's life that I'm going to essentially like be a teammate on Junior's growth. So that's kind of like, to me, one of the big downsides, whatever. My mother worked-ish, kind of, she was a teacher, then she did some real estate. But, we just like, go do your thing. She, you had to go, you're going to apply to college? Great. Let me know how that goes. And that was that. So I think that this is an interesting and thorny topic, especially for women. I know it is for men, and I know men, friends of mine who have some money, who have that big fear, like I don't want my kid to be a baby or a wimp or entitled and all of those things. But it just seems like the position of the woman who walks off the professional track is really fraught.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's, it's partly the helicopter parenting. You see them very involved in their kids' lives. It's also home renovation, which was a focus of a lot of these interviews. I interviewed also some people who kind of help wealthy people with their lives, like interior designers, financial planners and people like that. And I had an interior designer say to me, women make renovation their job, right? They just turn it into, they want to do something meaningful. They're skilled. They know how to run projects, right? This is what they do. And I just want to point out, these women are caught in a difficult structural situation. It's something that's been pointed out by sociologists studying this whole opt-out revolution, which is that many of them would like to work, but the truth is they are still primary parents, almost all of them. Their husbands have these jobs that are very time-consuming, that often require a lot of travel. So they can't have those kinds of jobs themselves unless they want to radically restructure their household, which I think they don't want to do and their husbands don't want to do. And the jobs that they were in initially before they had kids don't exist in a part-time fashion, right? So it's not just like, oh, they're lazy and they don't want to work. It's that there's no way for them to participate in the way that they've been trained to do. The other thing I want to mention is the ways in which their husbands, there's a lot of a chapter about this in the book, the ways that they really depend on their husbands to recognize their labor as like real labor, right? And they have conflicts with their husbands that appear to be conflicts about money often. The husband is often like, why are you spending so much money? And the wife is like, but I cut my own hair and I'm just spending money on the kid and you told me to buy X and Y, But I think a lot of it is because the husbands don't really understand what the wives are doing and they don't see the ways that they're maintaining the family's lifestyle as legitimate. Again, as they would, like my grandfather would have seen that as legitimate with my grandmother, but many of these men I think don't. And the ones who do, the wives who say, my husband says we have a perfect division of labor. He respects everything I do. He would never track how much money I spend. They are happy in that relationship, but they still see that as a possibility. The fact that the person who brings the money to the relationship ultimately does control the money, I think really plays out in these, especially in those families.
Can you talk a little bit about that philanthropy track and that how people, the stay-at-homers, or even some of the folks who have inherited wealth, what does that track do? Does that legitimize your wealth? Well, I'm on the 14 boards, and I mean, I don't know, like, if you're the Bass family, you've been doing that for, a couple hundred years probably. But what are these people that you interview? What are they doing around philanthropy? And what does that do to help legitimize their wealth?
Yeah, I mean, being philanthropic, charitable, giving back, these are elements of being morally worthy. So I kind of alluded to the other elements, which are working hard, even if you're not paid or even if you're an inheritor, being able to think of yourself as working hard, and then also interpreting your consumption as reasonable, right? Not being over the top. And so then the third element is this kind of broad category of giving back. And I think people dealt with that very differently. Some of these stay-at-home moms in these finance families, they did give away what's a significant amount of money to give away? I mean, something.
Well, if you're going to be like, all right, so if I'm Catholic, I'm tithing, it's 10%.
Yeah,
right?
Nobody's giving away 10%. I was actually surprised at how little they gave away relative to their incomes, right?
Right.
They can be giving away $50,000. The wealthiest people in my sample, maybe $250,000. I think even somebody gives away maybe $500,000 a year, $1 million. But these are people who are earning tens of millions of dollars a year. I mean, who have assets, certainly above $50 million. I think quite a lot above that.
We'll be right back with more of our interview with Rachel Sherman. If you've got a financial question or you're uneasy about your own wealth, give us a call. We want to hear from you. 855-411-JILL. Send an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger. Have a question? Call or email anytime. 855-411-JILL or askjill@jillonmoney.com.
You're back with Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And, we've got a special guest today because sometimes I just run across people that are so interesting. And this one really caused a stir, or a storm, actually, when she wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about people feeling anxious and uneasy about their affluence. Her name is Rachel Sherman. She's a sociologist, so she's an academic. And she was able to actually conduct some pretty cool in-depth interviews with 50 affluent New Yorkers. I get it. It's only 50. They're all in one place. I know. But it was really interesting for her because she was able to check out what their lifestyle choices, their understanding of their own privilege, and how they make sense of it. And, of course, this can cause a lot of people to have, conflicted feelings. And then there are these other folks, some of whom Mark and I have met, other guests that we've had, who are really amazing. They seem to be able to navigate their wealth and their elite status with a surprising sense of normalcy. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask Rachel about, when, what makes someone more capable of doing that. So here's more of our interview with Rachel Sherman. It's Jill on Money. Mark and I were laughing because somebody came in here who is very hardworking. I said, just Google this name. And I had him Google the name. And he's like, oh, my God. That person's spouse is a billionaire with a B. Mm. And we talked about how she's so normal. Mm. Look, I don't know. I didn't ask her about this, but, no worse for wear. Just seems to kind of wear it pretty easily and grew up lower middle class. Mm. I wonder what it is about someone's particular, maybe it's just her personality, but what makes people more comfortable with their positions that happen out of the blue? Because, it could be like a windfall for any reason. It could be you married somebody. It could be your own windfall.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I do think that that's a personality, maybe more of a personality thing. I remember I interviewed this one woman whose husband makes like $3 million. She grew up in the New York suburbs somewhere, upper middle class, kind of maybe a little bit lower than that. Her husband was kind of lower middle class. And she did not seem conflicted to me at all. And I just kept feeling like, where's the conflict, But in fact, I think she had found this middle ground. In a way, she was aware of people below her. Her kids went to public school, although I very much doubt that they will continue to do that when they're a little bit older. She was often talking about decisions that they had made about spending money that felt like they were in the middle. We'll spend $3,000. I can't remember. We'll spend $3,000 on a hotel suite for the whole family for however much time, but we won't fly first class. Or there's these sort of trade-offs that felt very in the middle. And she felt like they appreciated having their money way more than many of her husband's colleagues did, because they were all like complaining they didn't get paid more millions of dollars, and they thought that, she and her husband thought that was ridiculous. So there's a way that compared to the people around them, they're being very moderate. but then they're still a little bit tied into the roots. So that's one example of somebody who seems more comfortable.
Before you started this project, how would you have described your own upbringing? Would you have said middle class, upper middle class? How would you have described it?
I would have said upper middle class. And my upbringing is interesting because I have a kind of class. I come from a mixed class family, if that's a thing. My father's family is wealthy, not super wealthy, but he grew up wealthy. And my mother's family is, lower middle class, especially in terms of her parents were college educated, but they did not have very much money and always worked and, really struggled economically. And when I was growing up, I benefited from, my grandparents paid for me to go to private school my whole life, and they paid for me to go to an Ivy League college. And I saw my mom had sort of chosen, because she was a playwright and she had chosen to kind of pursue that, and she gave up a tenured job in academia in order to do that. So in a sense, she chose to, she didn't have to be kind of economically challenged, but she was. And so I grew up with, my parents were divorced, but I grew up with both of them more or less equally. And so I had the lifestyle of an upper middle class person but always living with my mom, who had the lifestyle of like a lower middle class person for most of my childhood. And she really struggled to make ends meet too. And I think that's where my interest in some of this comes from. And I've had conversations with other people about this too. And some of the people that I interviewed, when you have an experience, when you're privileged and you have an experience that is meaningful, not like somebody took you to a soup kitchen for 10 minutes, of people who don't have privilege, then you start to see your own privilege in a different way. And that experience can happen, it can take multiple forms. But I think it's common for people who have had that then to be more aware of their position.
Well, I think it's really fascinating. I think that when I was growing up, I think that my father would say we're upper middle class. And I came home once and I said, actually, no, we're upper class.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, we're not. And I'm like, yeah, we kind of are, Dad. Like, I'm not saying that I didn't grow up with millions, but I'm just saying that, like, you could see the way I could find the contrast was not because I went to, an elite public school outside of New York, but that I played sports. Mm-hmm. And the people I played sports with in all these different communities, on all these different teams, were from all over the place. And it was very clear what middle class was. And that was not us. Mm-hmm. And I think that my father was sort of shocked because I think he always wanted to be like the man of the people. And he didn't actually, he's the guy who is like really, like, I want to like make sure that the guy at the garage is taken care of. And I want to do that. Like, he was very into that. And I always thought he's just not comfortable with it.
Exactly.
And he's just not. He was never comfortable with it. And his father had money. And so he grew up like poor little rich boy, too bad. But it is really interesting. When I was reading this, I thought about how when you're in these communities, when everyone is the same and you do compare up or you compare down, like what are the things that you can expose your kids to help them? And actually, I really do believe sports was like the great leveler for me, that I just met a gazillion different type of people from all over the place. And even though I was at an elite school, when you're playing soccer at Brown University and there's someone there who's recruited from Florida who has no money, who's an amazing soccer player, and you get to be friends with them, you're like, oh, that's a whole different life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think sports, that's exactly the kind of experience I'm talking about, where you have a little bit of an exposure to people who are different from you. That is meaningful, right? That's not just like, oh, look at the poor kids and, appreciate your advantages, which is what I think a lot of these parents end up having to do.
Well, thanks so much to Rachel Sherman. She is an author. The book is called Uneasy Street, The Anxieties of Affluence. You should check it out. It really is surprising and quite interesting. You're listening to Jill on Money. When we return, we'll get to your questions. 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Wondering how to make your money work for you? Get on the line now. 855-411-JILL. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. This is the program to take all of that mystery and let it melt away, at least about your financial life. I'm Jill Schlesinger. I'm your host. Mark is running the show. Behind the glass window that separates us, I'm just giving you a little theater of the mind there, gang. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone number is 855-411-JILL. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. So let's bang through some emails here. This is from Jane in Chicago. We always appreciate your financial segments on CBS Morning News, also known as CBS This Morning, since this person is from Chicago, also from WBBM. Hooray. Thanks for the great advice. My question is, what is the best way to find a college student internship? My daughter's entering her senior year as a computer science major with a minor in cybersecurity at Iowa State University. She's in the honors college. She's always been an A student all of her life. She recently completed her study abroad component. Straight A's. God love her. What's the problem is right. She's searching and applying at the usual job sites, Indeed, Glassdoor. They primarily target full-time employees. Some of the internship job descriptions require previous internship experience. How ridiculous is that? Isn't an internship a first step? She attends career fairs at college. There is never enough time to get through the lines of eager students. They take place during class time, and they focus on local companies. She's also on LinkedIn. I'm tired of hearing that companies can't find qualified employees. There's definitely a disconnect between employer and potential employees. Are we missing something? How do we connect a good student with potential internships? Also, side note to all human resources, if you fill a job, remove it from the internet and have the decency to notify an applicant when you decline an application. I agree with that. I know that what you really want to do is, have like this one repository where you can find stuff, right? The way I think about this is that most people find these internships by working their own networks. And what I would do is I would make a list of sort of every person and I presume that the kid's coming home, and that's the internship would be in the Chicago area. So I would go and look at, say, the biggest employers in all of Chicago. And then I would go directly and start to try to find people in their computer science departments or in their cybersecurity departments. And then I would also try to look at the places where cybersecurity is being beefed up, like banks, financial institutions, and just ask people. Take a good look. I don't know what you do for a living, Jane, but what I would say is that you should make a list of every single person you know and then start pushing your daughter to go and meet with as many people as possible. And that, to me, is the best bet. Otherwise, you're right. You're going to get sucked into this sort of generalized these big job sites, these generalized programs that don't do much. And the other thing that might be interesting is, do you know anyone in government? I think a lot of the government agencies are now hiring for cybersecurity. So I would do that. And also lots of retailers are starting to do that. So anything, I would start with like a list and say, who are the biggest employers in the Chicago area? Then I would drill down and find out who they're, and like, it's sort of a fun thing to do when you think of it this way. It's like a treasure hunt. You'll find the right people, but it's going to take some work. And I apologize because that's a total drag, but she's young. She'll figure it out. I promise. Okay. Here's from Bruce. We're entering retirement or pseudo-retirement next year. To be properly diversified, what are the fewest number of mutual funds to be reasonable? I don't want to do a target date fund. I've heard of being 40 stocks, 60 bonds. As a stock fund, would the index 500 be enough? Should it be broken into the 500 index, something international, something else, bond funds, one fund, or a few funds? If it's a retirement account, what I would say is you could do a intermediate term bond fund, corporate bond fund. I think that would be just fine. For a stock fund, I think you're right. I would probably not even do maybe not an S&P 500. Maybe do like an extended market index, gives you more companies. I would also have an international fund in there. And if you wanted to potentially add one other, you might add a small company fund as well. And 60-40 is fine. Go check out some of the different asset allocation models. But you don't need 22 funds. People make a mistake. They think that that's the key to diversification. It's not. It's the asset class, not the number of funds. So, and the bond funds, again, I think you could do an intermediate fund and be just fine. One intermediate term fund. Okay. Kate writes, my mother-in-law sends me newspaper clippings on investing. I read a small article you wrote about Warren Buffett and his bet with Ted Sides. I found the article interesting and informational. Thank you. I'm very new to the idea of investing. Do you have any book or class suggestions for someone like myself that knows close to nothing about this subject? There is so much information available out there. It's hard to tell what is worth checking out. Well, let me put a plug in for my friend's book. Jack Otter wrote a book called Worth It, Not Worth It. And he is a friend of mine. I used to work with him. That's a great first book to read. The other, the other thing you can do is you can go onto the, various websites and start to educate yourself a little bit. Things like Fool.com, The Motley Fool is very good. Nerd Wallet is very good. Isn't that where Liz Weston writes? That's very good. And you can jump around a little bit. Don't worry. Next year, I will be publishing my book. Yeah, guys, it's happening. I'm going to start talking about this, but it is happening. I have to write a book. I'm in the middle of it. So it's going to happen, and it's going to be released in the beginning of 2019. So stay tuned. Stay tuned to this space for more information. Maybe we'll even start to figure out how to get pre-orders. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'll have to ask my editor. Okay, you are listening to Jill on Money. 855-411-JILL. That is our phone number. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we will be right back.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill@jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. 855-411-JILL. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Here's from Jim. He says, I know this is peanuts to you, but I have a question. By the way, nothing is peanuts to me. You got that? Except peanuts, which are peanuts to me. And peanut butter, which is peanut butter to me. Okay. Jim wants to know, he's got an annuity account. It's got $40,000 in it. It has a 3% guarantee rate of return. It made $1,100 this past year. There's no surrender on this account. My question is, should I look at something else to put the money into to make more money? I'd like it to make more in, say, the next 3 years, because then we'll probably need it. Hey, you know what? If you need it in 3 years, 3% for safe money, I'll take it. I'm not that bold. I think that what you might be doing is begging for a problem if you start reaching and trying to presumably get a little bit more out of this than you might. And what would you do? If you need the money in 3 years, imagine you pull the money out, you roll it into an IRA rollover, you move it somewhere else. I don't know if it's a retirement account or not. You try to press your luck a little bit. Try to make more because you're mad 3 and the market's up 25% last year or whatever, and you want more. And then all of a sudden the market craps out on you. And what are you left with? That's the problem. It's funny. I remember going through this a little bit in 2006-07, and people would ask me about, I have safe money, but I want to do something else. Or they put it into these floating rate funds. These are like basically funds that own lots of different bank loans. And everyone said, well, they're just like money market accounts. They're just like this. Guess what? They weren't just like that. Those funds lost about 30% in the year 2008. And just to be clear, that these so-called safe investments, keep them safe. All right. Okay. Hey, that's the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks again to Rachel Sherman. If you've got a financial question, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. We'll see you next week.